I'm going to talk about fur in the fashion industry. The practice of using fur in the fashion industry has been a controversial topic for many years. There are times when it was unheard of to wear fur, and there has been times when it's a part of everyday wardrobe. Right now, fur fashions are on the rise, as evidenced by magazine ads, magazine spreads, and what is simply being sold in stores. It's really easy to block the mental image of a fur coat on a shiny metal hanger that was once multiple living and breathing animals. One coat could contain pelts of from 10 to 24 foxes or 36 to 65 minks. These are helpless animals that had an unhappy beginning, middle, and end to their life from their unfortunate luck of being born into the fur industry. The use of animal furs in the fashion industry is unethical due to the fact that pro-fur organizations deceitful advertising that result in worse treatment for animals each season. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history. And in the 80s and 90s, fur was on a downward spiral due to a no-fur campaign that was launched by many different anti-fur organizations. They were able to create a negative image for fur with the use of celebrities and other influential figures. The majority of Chinese fur farms were established in the past 10 to 15 years. Fur farms can vary in size greatly from large fur farms to small family-owned farms. Larger farms can hold up to 20,000 animals, and they act as multifunctional companies producing fur from birth to final post-production. The lack of laws in China and high numbers of animals in small areas lead to atrocious treatment of animals. Many countries, including the U.S., felt the impact of this anti-fur campaign. Countries' fur industries were ruined. So after multiple seasons of bad sales, pro-fur organizations needed to do something. They themselves launched a multi-million-dollar campaign to change the image of fur. This campaign was unfortunately successful and had intense and cruel repercussions that are still felt today. The goal of this ongoing campaign is to change people's minds about the ethical stigma emotionally involved with wearing fur. They want to change fur's image with design houses, designers, and women's magazines. The fur companies want to broaden the image of who is their target, from that older cliche woman who drowns herself in luxury to the everyday young fashionable women. Aiming at young people is a risky target because young people are one of the most critical age groups out there. They are the most liberal of any age group, and this raises questions as to why fur sales have been rising. But questions aside, fur sales are rising fast. Fur is not just a luxury item anymore. It is seen all over the fashion industry, from little trims to full jackets. Fashion companies are beginning to produce lines with fur in them more and more. The growing demand is causing companies to increase production of fur, and because of this, they need to increase where they get their fur from. And they're electing to outsource to China and other Asian countries because of cheap labor and lack of regulations. It makes the companies' lives easier and gives them an opportunity for higher profits. These incentives are what is responsible for China being the leading fur trade production and processing center in the world. The changes in sales in China is hard information to find because a lot of Chinese fur farms are family-owned or sold in markets, and the information is not readily available. But I read a report by the Global Agriculture Information Network that surveyed feed production mills and that sell their feed to Chinese fur farms, and this method of survey is very reliable because more animals equals more feed. In 2009, the feed company was producing 1.2 million tons, and in 2010 they were selling 1.68 million tons to Chinese fur farms. With this, it's estimated that China's mink, fox, and raccoon dog supply increased 45%. Extreme increases like this lead to more and more suffering animals. Laws are put in place for mistreatment of animals, but China has an extreme lack of laws and is one of the few countries that doesn't have any legal provisions. This leads to unimaginable conditions. A report done by Care for the Wild International went through an in-depth description about farms in China, and they went into 8 farms, 2 markets, as well as a major slaughterhouse. The investigation was completely undercover, and what they found was unimaginable. Was not completely undercover, sorry, make that clear. And what they found was unimaginable. Cages were 35 inches by 27 inches, and each cage will hold 1 to 2 animals. The animals will be slaughtered after six months after their first molt, or kept for another 5 to 7 years for breeding purposes. The animals display distress behavior such as severe fearfulness and even in some cases self-mutilation. Once the animal's fur is at its peak, the animals are removed from their cages and transported over extremely long distances. And they're transported to locations near fur markets where they are slaughtered nearby. The process begins with the animals being stunned in multiple ways, including swinging wood or metal poles at the head or just swinging the animal onto the ground. The animals will struggle, convulse, and lie trembling until barely moving on the ground. Then one by one, each animal is skinned, some still alive. Okay, some still alive for another 5 to 10 minutes afterward. In rebuttal, the fur industry claimed that fur quality is an indicator as to how the animals were treated before kill. Good quality fur would equal good care for animals. This would make sense if the fur wasn't treated, if it was just clean, but because fur is treated with so many different chemicals, this isn't a reliable method to see. Fur farms account for 85% of total fur use, but poachers and hunters kill the other 15%. Since the need for animal skins is rising, so is the number of animals that are hunted. The most common method are baited and concealed traps, and the problem with this is that the target animal is often not what the hunters catch in their traps. Trappers report that for every kill, 3 to 10 other animals are killed by the traps. The hunter does not have control over what animals go into their traps, so it could be endangered or other animals. The growth of the fur industry is beginning to attract attention to the cruel conditions that animals are forced to be put through. This is opening up avenues for governments to begin implementing laws that will hopefully begin to control the cruel and unusual practices of fur farms. Australia and the UK have both banned fur farms on their borders, and Croatia began a 10-year phase-out in 2007. The US is far behind the rest of the world in fur trade regulations. Most of the laws in the US are implemented are concerning animals that are not used for fur, so they're not hunted or farmed in fur farms. The U.S., one of the problems is that the U.S. animal welfare laws are all controlled by the state, so it's hard to control. There was one groundbreaking movement that the City Council of West Hollywood implemented was a ban against the selling of fur within the city limits. West Hollywood is known to have groundbreaking laws and ordinances like this one, and frequently other states follow suit. This was just implemented in late 2011, so changes may be coming to the rest of the United States. And the U.S. is such a large and powerful country that any changes, no matter how small, will be heard throughout the world. Changes need to be made to the fur trade. The pro-fur organizations now try to make it seem cool to be wearing fur and not attach the image of a dead animal to the garments. The advertising is causing people, especially younger generations, to be okay with wearing fur in their day-to-day lives. Sales are rising, and in turn, so are the number of animals that have to die. China is the least expensive way for designers to produce fur products they need, and unfortunately, China also has the least amount of rules about animal welfare. The ever-growing number of animals getting born to fur farms are treated worse and worse every season. I found a quote from Professor Andrew Lindsay of the Oxford Center for Animal Ethics at the University of Oxford, and he's quoted as saying, "All the ways we exploit animals are terrible, but none of them more terrible than the living hell we create for animals on fur farms. Their beautiful coats, designed to protect them, have become their one-way ticket to hell. Fur is undoubtedly an unethical practice in the fashion industry." Any questions? Yes?
Do you think that it's just as wrong to buy leather products as it is fur products?
I think it depends on what your stance is on if you are a vegetarian or not, because leather is mostly a byproduct of the meat industry, so it's not a good thing to like kill an animal just for the leather, but if you're eating meat anyways, it kind of is hypocritical to not agree with leather. Any other questions? Yes?
What's the environmental impact of imitation fur?
Well, according to some sources that I read, it takes 20% more energy to put real fur through production, but having fake fur, it's all made of chemicals. It's all synthetic fibers. So that synthetic fibers are all made out of petroleum, which is oil, and that's also not good to be making products out of that too. So that's kind of controversial. Okay, are we done?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you turn it off?
Do we need to show ourselves?
I guess.
We have to show ourselves.
Hello.
No more Christmas tree.